yes, it's one thing to have an ad spend, but your core pillar is your organic content marketing. That's where you need to start before you even think about investing money in ads. And I think that something like this massive shift, is just going to make that all the more important.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the ProfileTree Podcast. My name is Emer and I am here this week with Menial and Laura. And today we're going to be covering a bit of a different topic for us three. So we're going to be looking at updates to Meta's ad performance in the EU. So this is something that we noticed this week and we just kind of wanted to dive into it to kind of increase our own understanding of it, as well as everyone else's understanding of it, and just to kind of look through what are these changes. What will this mean for users and what will this mean for businesses who would use Meta ads? So, Laura, do you want to kick us off in terms of what's going on?
Yeah, this is definitely quite a meaty topic, and even I'm struggling to understand it at times. So I suppose people that really have their ear to the ground in terms of digital marketing will probably know about Meta's presence in the EU. They've received a number of fines over the years because of their failure or struggle to comply with some of the EU laws around digital advertising and digital markets. So there's something called the Digital Markets Act, which I think they've been fined. I think it was a few months ago, something like $200 million. Granted, a drop in the ocean for Mark Zuckerberg, but it's still something worth thinking about. So up until this point, Meta have had a consent or pay structure in place. And what that means that if you don't want to have like really strong personalized ads on your accounts, Facebook and Instagram, then you can actually be paying a monthly subscription. I'm not even entirely sure what the amount is to try and get rid of those ads or at least reduce them. I did remember reading something a few months ago that actually said that the feature in the UK meant that UK users would pay slightly less than those in the EU. I'm not entirely sure why they had that approach. But basically, these updates are kind of loosening that pay or consent model so that even users who are not paying can still effectively customize how personalized their ads are. Now, obviously, what we'll be discussing today is kind of looking at this from both the perspective of users and the perspective of businesses who are actually selling online. So I suppose, Emer, what are your thoughts on how it's going to impact users? Like, what is your relationship with online ads?
I do think often it depends on the platform that you're being given your ads on. I find for me personally, Instagram seems to have very specific ad targeting for me. It's a lot of accounts that I would interact with. It's often products that I've maybe been browsing on like my Safari browser that'll then come up on my Instagram. It's very persuasive, I will say, because as someone who just does enjoy a bit of online shopping, it can kind of bring you back. Maybe you've got distracted when you were looking at something, you forgot about it, and then it just kind of brings you back. You've seen it then on socials. They'll maybe have like a paid post of someone wearing the clothes or using the product, and you're like, okay, that'll kind of encourage you. I do think sometimes they're a little bit overkill depending on the time of year. Obviously, we're currently coming into Christmas. We've just had Black Friday. There's just been a lot of advertising pushed our way. So I think in terms of ads at the moment, it can be a little bit overwhelming. But generally, I mean, I'm not necessarily opposed to them, but I just think sometimes it can be quite concerning from like a user perspective of how specific your ads can get and like what information that we have provided that's led to your ads being that specific can be a little bit worrying. I don't know if you guys agree with that or what your feelings are.
Yeah, I kind of see both sides. If I'm gonna have to put up with ads, like we all are, it's at the point now where most of our subscriptions, unless you're willing to pay a premium price, you're gonna have to watch ads. And I'm kind of okay with that. They don't really bother me in any way. But I suppose then on the other side, it's like people are like, okay, it is actually frightening how specific these are. And again, like a lot of things, there are ethical considerations. Like if someone, for example, is trying to have kids, maybe there's like IVF targeted ads or clinics or something like that. That's where it can get a wee bit murky, and you're like, is that something that's appropriate to advertise? But they're like, well, the data is non-discriminatory. They're basically just seeing that your algorithm, you're searching for things like this, and they're kind of connecting the dots. I think the bigger question is, or the bigger thing is that it's good for people to be able to have the choice. So while some people definitely would be okay with ads, or they maybe encourage them because, like, as simple as that, they do like online shopping, and if they're going to get ads, they'd rather it was about things that they maybe aren't aware of that they might then want to purchase. But at the same time, I think it's important to be able to say, no, actually, this isn't for me, or I want to have a stricter control on how my data is used. The next big consideration is what this will mean for businesses. Renelle, any kind of like immediate thoughts and what you'll be discussing with your clients, for example, who might have e-commerce businesses or do a lot of digital ads in the EU?
So this is my opinion. I do feel like it'll be weaker traction for them if someone chooses to pay for the subscription. So from what I've read there, it's $5.99 per month on the web and then $12.99 on iOS and Android. So it's a bit mental. You know, I wonder how they're going to do this subscription. So depending on how many people actually pay for that, and will it affect businesses? Yeah, for sure. So that's why some people might have to go back to traditional marketing, such as email marketing, banking those emails as much as possible, or other traditional types of marketing, which, I don't know, door to door, if you wanted to, say, for example, if you wanted to target local, well, sure, go for it. I think that's one of the major things. So as a business, you kind of need to adjust to this. Like, regardless, it's going to happen. You know, we're seeing this happening, from what I've heard, at the 16th of December or start of January. So it's very, very close now. I would say that your warm audiences will become a lot smaller, just because, if, as I say, I know I'm repeating myself again, but if I'm going to pay for these ads, I want to see what I'm seeing. Sometimes a lot of people are fed up with spammy ads as well, which is obviously, you can agree with that. I know for sure that I'd be very, very annoyed seeing an ad over and over again, or something a bit too non-PG as well. That's another concern. That's why some people might pay for these.
And it sort of ties in nicely. Like, I suppose we as an agency have gradually moved away from PPC over the years. And even when we were more active within PPC, we would have reminded clients that, yes, it's one thing to have an ad spend, but your core pillar is your organic content marketing. That's where you need to start before you even think about investing money in ads. And I think that something like this massive shift is just going to make that all the more important. I read a statistic that said that in 2025, the average cost per acquisition for a digital ad was up to $49. Obviously, that's dependent on what your specifications are within your ad campaign. But if you think of the average business, that's a huge amount to put into advertising. Like, that's your profit margin potentially, it depends on what you sell. Obviously, if it's high value services, it might be slightly different, but you have to really consider about, is it worth it, and work with a reputable PPC agency, or, again, back to what we always say, upskill yourself to understand it, because it can be incredibly complex. And while, at face value, you could go, okay, well, I bet you ad spends are going to come drastically down next year. It doesn't look like that at all. It actually probably is more that people will shift their ad spend onto other areas of the business rather than focusing solely on social media based ad campaigns, which isn't necessarily a bad thing given the current costs. And if people aren't converting the way that they once were, then it is good to start to consider other avenues. Definitely a reliance on paid advertising is something that people need to move away from.
Yeah, I think commercially, and the client services side of things, that's something that we've seen a massive shift on this year. People who've maybe come to us asking about that initially, we've kind of been able to just educate them on our experience with pay ads, and just in terms of, it's quite a lot of money. You're not getting everything back that you may have initially thought you would. So we would usually recommend putting that budget. Like, you can obviously use some of it for PPC, but I think it's important to set aside some of your budget for things that are more community building for your brand. So like your blogs, maybe your email marketing, SEO, things like that are going to get your brand, seen by consumers, or for different users that may want to reach out and work with you. I think that's really, really important, because paid ads do seem to be a lot of people's first choice in terms of thinking you could get more traffic, but it's not always the case if the ads aren't maybe set up correctly. And another thing to consider is, with the increase this year in different legislation to do with cookie consent and things like that, we've noticed a lot of our clients having problems with their tracking on their ads, which means that even though you're paying quite a lot of money for these ads, your tracking and the metrics that you're seeing might not even be accurate, because if someone isn't consenting, you're not going to be able to see a visit on your site, and your metrics might be completely off. So that's another thing to really be careful around, because you could be spending a lot of money and not seeing the value in it at all if it's not being tracked properly, unfortunately. So another thing to consider just when it comes to your ads.
I can think of nothing more frustrating than, like you said, putting all that time and effort and finances into ads and then not actually being able to conclusively say if they're working.
If you move away from ads, you could definitely, use your budget towards, as you said there, your SEO. Obviously, invest on a marketing team of some sort as well to try to find organic traffic then instead of paid traffic. So it could be a good opportunity for some businesses to be a bit more unique, I would say. You could take it that way rather than having to rely on ad spend all the time. And you're right, Emer. Like like I've had clients who are spending thousands of pounds per month and not getting anything in return. That's not just Meta ads, but Google ads as well. So maybe it's another thing that you can consider, which is try to be a bit more unique with the content that you're doing. Try to look at some trends a bit more and try to shift your topic somewhere else to try to push marketing.
Yeah, and I think like looking at forecasting for next year, it looks like there might be some sort of marketing channels that haven't necessarily died off, but I think are definitely having a resurgence. Things like email marketing, SMS marketing, which I suppose is had its ups and downs, more than likely due to the sort of systems or platforms that are in place to actually help you do it. Because email marketing used to be, you had MailChimp, you sent out a campaign, you maybe sent me reminders, but there wasn't as much sort of potential with it in terms of what you could do. But with the introduction of automation software or CRM systems that are allowing people to send out mass emails, send out set it to a specific reminder. It could be as simple as, oh, in 48 hours send this out, or if it's not clicked, do this. You can start to put different workflows in place that can try and maximize the chances of converting or at least getting engagement with potential leads. Like I think it was Black Friday, I recently bought some items from, it was like an online, like it was like vintage sportswear.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, the email marketing workflow that they have in place, this place is the hard sell. So as soon as you place your order, obviously you got your order confirmation, about 2 seconds later, they send you an email asking for a review. Now, obviously, you've just placed your order, so that's a really unusual thing to happen. You're thinking, how can I give a review? It's whereas with Amazon, for example, they what's the sort of process is that once your order's been delivered, they'll then check in a day or two later to say like, what are your thoughts on this? But the kind of cleverest thing that this brand did was they asked you for a review in return to be in with a chance to win. I think it was a voucher or it was items, and it was like quite good odds of actually being able to win them. But it was so small. I was like, well, yeah, of course are gonna leave your review. It takes 2 seconds. And because I had noticed that a lot of their reviews were about just purchased my first order. The website was really easy to use. And I thought, who leaves a review about the website being easy to use? But that was why, because they were like, well, there's nothing else of my experience so far that I can comment on other than I had an easy to use checkout process on the website. So I thought things like that are really clever. It's not only getting people to engage with your brand, but also, again, it's getting people to leave reviews. So they had hundreds and hundreds of reviews for a brand that was maybe only a couple of years old. And even after that, it was like, here's a 12.41 credit, or here's a 30% off voucher. Constant. And I mean, these guys are relentless, but I'm kind of reluctant to unsubscribe because I'm like, well, actually there might be a wee D here that is pretty good. So I'm kind of open to it. I don't know, what are your thoughts on email or SMS marketer? Is it something that you would say you engage quite a lot with, or is it something you mostly like delete before reading?
When you say that, with Black Friday, I bought something as a Christmas present, and I don't know if you've ever used this, but InPost, in terms of collecting packages from an InPost locker.
Oh, yeah, like they're in supermarkets and things like that.
Yes. So I wasn't at home, so I got it delivered to an InPost locker near me where I could go and pick it up. And InPost has a funny thing where it times how long it takes you from the minute you scan your barcode to lift your package and click confirm. The whole process is done.
Like it judges you?
Yeah, so like in minutes after I had done that, I received obviously the email confirming from InPost that I had lifted my parcel, but then an email from the brand themselves saying, "You've collected your parcel, now leave us a review." And in turn for the review, you were entered into a draw and for a £250 voucher for this. It's a homeware brand and it's quite expensive. So you were like, oh, that's quite good. But I forgot to do it. I was walking home, just didn't bother for days and days on it. And they were like, remember, you have to do this if you want to voucher. And I did eventually do it. But I was like, it was every day for about 3 days that this went on. And I was like, the fact that they did it right after I lifted my package, I was like, that's impressive. I can't be angry at it because I mean, you're right. I did just lift the package and yeah, and then because there's a little incentive there, I do feel like you're more likely to leave them a review.
Definitely, but then it kind of makes you question the I suppose the brand trust, because you think, well, are people just leaving a positive review because they want to be able to chance of winning something? There's a lot of like the quid pro quo there, but
Yeah.
hey, I'm a sucker for a good deal or something free. So yeah, it's a difficult one. I feel like I went off on a tangent about email marketing, but I just had such different experiences this year with Black Friday. Maybe it's because I'm usually not subscribed to a lot of things, but I think this year it was like, you got to be in it to win it. So just signed up left, right, and center. But definitely there's going to start to be a shift, I would say, where businesses that previously wouldn't have used certain marketing channels are going to start to use it a lot. Um, and I guess for the kind of approach for our clients anyway that are still going to continue with spending money on ads. You don't necessarily have to give up ads altogether, but definitely you're going to have to broaden the kind of targeting with the ads. So obviously before you could have catered specific ads to specific audiences or specific ad sets, but we're going to see people maybe do more general sort of behind the team or general engagement ones, or, just the story behind the brand, because otherwise, like we have still seen this year already before this happened, people are going to see quite a lot of money wasted on ad spend. Any kind of final thoughts on this story?
No, like I do believe with the ad spend there, you need to be very aware of what captions you're putting onto your posts as well. So if you really want to, if you are still going to be using ads, fair enough, but make sure that you're still including your hashtags. Make sure that you're adding power words or keywords onto the caption itself, because from what I've noticed, anytime that I'm searching up anything on Google, say like well, right now in my head is a chocolate brownie. So say, for example, I was looking for chocolate brownie. I don't know why. But there might be a recipe that'll appear and that someone uploaded on Facebook. And depending if they decided that they wanted to sell a product and, that they wanted to have that as an advertisement, there's a chance that it'll appear in that search engine results page. So it can still work. Obviously, with the shift in ads at the minute, it's going to definitely impact a lot of businesses. But I still think that there's still that advantage to it. My recommendation is probably don't spend too much on it now. Probably focus your attention elsewhere for your digital marketing, because as Emer, as Laura said, you're going to waste your money. So you don't want to waste your money at all.
Absolutely not. So yeah, it's interesting to see. Like you said, Renelle, I think these changes for men are supposed to be in place, as early as next week. Whether or not they stick exactly to what they'll say they do, difficult to know. And based on previous behaviors, we don't know for sure, but we'll see. Certainly, it's just again about making yourself aware and not just continuing to do the same thing. Whether it's ad campaigns being done internally or work with an agency. But you would like to think that all agencies are going to be on top of this and ready to make changes based on what's happened. So I guess that's us finished up for another week. Thank you, Renelle. Thank you, Emer. And maybe our last podcast of 2025 potentially. It's been a good year. Glad to be here. And yeah, thank you so much, guys, and see you next time.
Thank
No
you.
worries. Thank you very much.